The church bells had barely stopped echoing when the whispers began, low and sharp like knives sliding between ribs, and she felt them before she heard them, the looks, the judgment, the cold certainty that she did not belong here anymore. Aisha stood near the front pew, dressed in a simple black dress that still smelled faintly of milk because her baby, wrapped tightly against her chest, had cried through most of the funeral, as if even the child could sense that the man who once held them both was now only a memory laid beneath the ground. Her husband's photograph rested beside the altar, his smile frozen in a world that no longer included her, and as the priest murmured the final prayer, Aisha's hands trembled, not from grief alone, but from fear, because she knew what was coming. Her in-laws had not spoken to her since the coffin was lowered. They had sat stiffly, faces hard, eyes burning with something darker than sorrow. The moment the service ended, two men she recognized, her husband's older cousins, stepped forward, their faces stern, their movements deliberate, and before she could even whisper her husband's name one last time, one of them grabbed her arm. "You have no right to be here anymore," he hissed, loud enough for others to hear, and the other seized the edge of her shawl, pulling it back as if she were an intruder instead of a widow. Gasps rippled through the church, but no one intervened. Heads turned away, eyes dropped to the floor, and in that instant Aisha understood how alone she truly was. She clutched her baby tighter as they dragged her down the aisle, her shoes scraping against the stone floor, the echoes of her soft protests swallowed by the vastness of the sanctuary that moments ago had promised comfort and now delivered cruelty. Outside, the cold air slapped her face, and rain began to fall, thin at first, then heavier, streaking her cheeks so that no one could tell where tears ended and rain began. "Leave," one of the men said, shoving her toward the steps. "The house is not yours. The name is not yours. The child," he paused, sneering, "we'll see about that." And with that threat hanging in the air, they turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing there, shaking, humiliated, with a baby who whimpered softly against her chest. People streamed past her, murmuring condolences that felt hollow now, offering quick, awkward smiles before hurrying away, as if her pain were contagious. Aisha sank onto the cold steps, her strength finally giving out, and she pressed her forehead against her child's tiny head, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep, that she would protect him, that she would survive this, that somehow, somewhere, life would not always be this cruel. That was when a black luxury car rolled to a slow stop at the edge of the churchyard, its polished surface gleaming despite the rain, and she noticed it only because it did not hurry, did not pass her by like everyone else. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out, dressed in a dark coat, his posture calm, his eyes observant, taking in the scene with a quiet intensity that made Aisha uneasy. He did not rush to speak. Instead, he watched as she tried to stand and failed, her legs numb, her dignity already stripped away. Finally, he approached, holding an umbrella over them both, shielding her and the baby from the rain without asking permission, and when he spoke, his voice was low, steady, and unexpectedly kind. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Aisha shook her head, though the truth was far more complicated than bruises. "I'm fine," she lied automatically, because that was what the world expected her to say, but something in his gaze told her he did not believe her. He glanced toward the church doors, then back at her, and for the first time since her husband's death, someone looked at her not as a problem, not as a burden, but as a human being. "I saw what happened," he said simply. "And it shouldn't have." She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of that statement, so many things shouldn't have happened, and yet here she was, but instead she found herself crying harder, the sobs breaking free now that the effort to stay composed was no longer necessary. The man waited, patient, offering a clean handkerchief, and when she finally looked up, he introduced himself only as Daniel, offering no title, no hint of the power his wealth afforded him, though the car, the confidence, and the quiet respect others nearby suddenly showed him spoke volumes. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked, and the question pierced her like a blade, because the answer was no. The house she had shared with her husband was no longer hers, her parents were gone, friends were distant, and the future stretched before her like an endless, dark road. She hesitated, pride warring with desperation, but the baby's soft cry settled the matter. "No," she admitted. Daniel nodded, as if he had expected this, and gestured toward the car. "Then let me help you," he said, not as an offer that demanded gratitude, but as a statement of fact, and in that moment, Aisha felt the first fragile spark of hope flicker to life amid the ashes of her grief. As the car pulled away from the church, the rain blurring the stained glass windows behind them, she did not know that this encounter would change everything, that the man beside her was not just a passerby, but a self-made millionaire whose life had been shaped by loss as sharp as her own, that his decision to stop that day would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge the cruelty she had just endured, confront the injustice that had tried to erase her, and prove that sometimes, in the darkest moments, help arrives not with thunder, but with quiet compassion and the simple act of stopping when everyone else walks away. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you feel something deep inside, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that hope can appear when we least expect it, and your support helps us bring more powerful, emotional stories to life.